So our next couple of speakers, I think, will address some of the issues that Craig spoke about in terms of communicating risk to people and ways in which we can do it better. And our first speaker will be Dr. Knabb, who's currently the current director of the National Hurricane Center. He received his bachelor's degree in atmospheric science from Purdue University and his master's of science and doctorate in meteorology from Florida State. He's worked with the National Hurricane Center as a forecaster, as a director of the deputy director of the Central Pacific Hurricane Center in Honolulu. Did a little bit of time with the Weather Channel and looks like we'll be doing a little more time with the Weather Channel. But he's now our current Hurricane Center director, and he's been there since 2012. So, Rick.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I was going to talk about the changes to our products this year, but I've been asked to give a briefing on subtropical depression number 1. But I've refused because I think the briefing would be shorter because of the very short duration of that storm. It's not worth our time. But if you go to hurricanes.gov and look at our website, it does give you a real-time look at how the look and feel of some of our graphical products are changing this year. So I don't have to show you those because you can look at some of them on the webpage. You'll get a general idea of the change of the look and feel, but since it's at depression stage, it doesn't have a lot of the tropical storm force wind threshold induced features of our products. But take a look. It'll give you a little preview of how things might look a little different this coming year. So you don't have the clicker. There it is. So I do want to talk about some of the key major changes to our products this year. The details, I would point you to tomorrow's workshops, where a lot of the staff members from the National Hurricane Center will be talking all day tomorrow about the details of these changes, including details on how our forecast processes and accuracy are changing, and you'll have a chance to really get into a Q&A with them about that. But I do want to highlight some of the major changes that are coming and give you a taste of what you'll be discussing tomorrow. Now, to provide a really good example of why the first change is so important, and this is the big one, this is the older look and feel version of our cone and watch warning graphic. And in this particular case, from Matthew last year, you see that we've got hurricane warnings up, for example, on the southeastern coast of Florida. Now, we did struggle and debate and have difficult decisions on where to differentiate between hurricane warning and tropical storm warning, but we did include my home county, Broward County, in the hurricane warning. We did not include Miami-Dade County, but that's for the wind hazard. Now, last year we did issue our prototype storm surge watch warning graphic, and this is a little bit of a view of what that looked like, but you'll notice the southern extent of the prototype storm surge warning area in the hot, bright color there doesn't go into Broward County. It starts in the Palm Beaches and goes northward from there. And this illustrates one of the major benefits of moving in this direction and answers the question, why are we going to a separate storm surge watch and warning? And that's because the hurricane force winds or tropical storm force winds and the storm surge hazards don't always occur in the same places and at the same time. And in this particular case, we were able to differentiate the risk from different hazards. For example, Broward County, that it was a wind risk, but not so much a storm surge risk. And so they were able to, based upon that information and all the briefings that we did with the local forecast offices in talking to the emergency managers in both counties, in Broward and Palm Beach, that Broward County did not call for evacuations for storm surge, but Palm Beach County did in one of their zones. So this, again, one of the major benefits of this. And this graphic will be one of the ways that we communicate the storm surge watch and warning this coming year when it becomes an operational National Weather Service watch and warning. So this is the culmination of many, many years of work. A lot of social sciences input went into this. A lot of you, I am sure, were contacted and involved in the discussion as we were developing this new capability. I just want to thank everybody who participated in that. There are a lot of details to discuss in the workshops tomorrow about how this will be disseminated, and I urge you to come in and talk with us about that. And you'll notice another big benefit of the storm surge watch and warning is it's not just a strip along the coast. Look at that area near Port St. Lucie. It goes inland from the immediate coastline a little bit. We're going to put up the warning and the watch for whatever land area, in the case of the warning, has a danger of life-threatening storm surge, and in the case of the watch, the possibility of life-threatening storm surge. And of course, this is a companion to the already operational potential storm surge flooding map that will be primarily for decision makers here in the room to make more informed evacuation decisions. And big benefit of that, of course, is we are focusing on where the hazard could occur, already baking in the uncertainties in the track, the intensity, the size, and so forth. So, operational storm surge watch and warning from the National Weather Service coming this year, collaborated between us digitally, between the National Hurricane Center and the local National Weather Service forecast offices. Now, let's take another Matthew example to highlight the benefits of one of the other changes coming this year. Here's a little earlier advisory from Hurricane Matthew when it's down in the Caribbean, and you see the forecast track where it goes a beam of central Florida early on Friday morning and then heads north. And then going along with that advisory, an existing product that was issued last year was our wind speed probabilities. This is for tropical storm force winds, the chances of any point on the map of experiencing sustained winds of tropical storm force within the next 5 days. So at my house in this particular case in southeast Florida, it's about a 1 in 4, 25% chance of occurrence. But one of the major pieces of information that is lacking in our graphical product suite. It's been in the text products to some extent, and it's been something many of you, especially in the emergency management community, have been looking at a lot in HUREVAC, but only really in a deterministic way with a lot of assumptions. What's really missing here is the timing. How long do we have before the winds of tropical storm force arrive? And that's not only important because of the wind hazard itself, but because once winds of tropical storm force sustained or arriving, it becomes difficult, if not outright dangerous, to be making preparations to prepare for the wind or evacuating for the storm surge and so on. So this year, we're going to have a new graphical product. It'll be experimental this year, which means there will be an opportunity for you to provide feedback via the Hurricane Center website, or just talking to us directly, of course. What this will do is provide, in this particular case, where this is going to be the default graphic for our wind arrival timing product suite that you'll see on our website. This depicts any point on the map. What is the earliest reasonable time of arrival of sustained winds of tropical storm force, presuming there's at least a 5% chance of getting the winds of tropical storm force at all within the next 5 days. Behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of probabilistic calculation using the same algorithm that generates the existing wind speed probability product. But in this particular case, in my house in southeastern Florida, what I'd be able to glean from this is the earliest reasonable time the winds of tropical storm force would arrive would be something around 8 p.m. on Wednesday. The detail behind that is that there's a 90% chance that it'll take beyond that time for the winds of that strength to arrive. But there's a 10% chance the winds could get there that time or sooner. So it's a reasonable earliest arrival time. And this is a good starting point for understanding how much time we all have left. And having been in TV previously and then briefing to the media and emergency managers in this current job, the timing aspect has always been one of the most challenging pieces of information to keep straight in my head and to brief and for all of us to stay on the same page about. Even during Matthew and Hermine last year, the timing of when the winds were going to arrive was always something that was hard for everybody to get on the same page about. So just having this product would be helpful. But you're also going to have a lot of flexibility as the user on the website to have different ways of looking at this particular new product suite. One option you're going to have is to underlay the cumulative 5-day chance of occurrence of winds of tropical storm force. So this gives you the complete picture. What are at any point on the map, what are the chances of it happening to me, and then what's the earliest reasonable time those winds might arrive. And of course, again, this is not just for getting a handle on the wind hazard itself. This can be very helpful in the context of evacuation decision making and the timing of that for the storm surge hazard. Now, we also want to provide the most likely time of arrival. For those who have a little more tolerance for risk, or at least want to put the earliest reasonable time of arrival in context, this time is really the time at which there's about an equal chance of the winds getting there later or earlier than the time shown here at any point on the map. In this particular case, the most likely time of arrival would be something in the midday time frame at my house in southeastern Florida. So a later time than the earliest reasonable. And in most cases, I'd be more inclined to get things done by the earliest reasonable time of arrival, but this level of risk will also be provided as well. So again, in a similar way to the potential storm surge flooding map, where the answer, the graphical output, is provided in the units of the parameter we're talking about. In the case of the potential storm surge flooding map, the output is in feet. And the probability at any one point on the map has been pre-decided at a 10% threshold of exceedance. In this particular case, the output is in hours. And we've pre-decided in the two graphics a 10% threshold or a 50% threshold at any given location. You also have, on the most likely arrival time option, to underlay the cumulative chance of winds of tropical storm force. So an experimental product this year that I hope will really get us all on the same page on what the uncertainty is in the wind arrival times, because this is such an important parameter for all kinds of decision making, including the evacuation decisions that you make for storm surge. And then, big change number 3, again, all these things will be discussed in more detail tomorrow in our workshops. This is what one example of our graphical tropical weather outlook looked like last August, with 3 systems indicated on the graphic. And I'll call your attention to the one close to the Bahamas, Cuba, and Florida, which has the medium chance of formation within the area hatched within the next few days. But look how close to land it is. And just like many other past events, including prominent ones like Tropical Storm Bill over by Texas a couple of years ago, where the system was trying to get its act together, close to forming as a tropical cyclone, at least had a relatively high chance of becoming a tropical cyclone close to land, but it wasn't one yet. So what that meant was, like in this case, with that area near Florida, you don't have the full advisory package from the Hurricane Center. You don't have tropical storm or hurricane watches and warnings that could even be issued. We had the restriction, we couldn't do that. So here's an example of what it could look like if this exact scenario were to recur exactly the same way in 2017. What you would most likely be seeing is an advisory on a potential tropical cyclone. Now, before anyone gets too concerned about how complex this new system is going to be, hopefully I can convince you that it really is not going to be that different than what we have now. The main difference is going to be that you're going to be seeing advisories from us a little bit sooner for systems that have proximity to land, they're within the watch warning time frame, and a pretty high chance of tropical cyclone formation within that 48-hour time window. And in those particular cases, we will have the option, we won't do it all the time, we'll just have the option to issue these advisories on what will look, smell, and feel like advisories on a tropical depression, or maybe a tropical storm. So in this particular case, we invented the scenario that maybe this would have been called potential tropical cyclone 9. If it then did what Hermine actually did and later became a tropical storm, then it would go on to become tropical storm Hermine. If there's an intervening period where it's a tropical depression, we just change the header from potential tropical cyclone to tropical depression, and it keeps the same number. Now, quick quiz question. If on June 12th, the very next cyclone or potential tropical cyclone, the very next system we write advisories on in 2017 is a potential tropical cyclone, what will we call it? A potential tropical cyclone 2, because we've had subtropical depression 1 today. It's going to use the same numbering system that the tropical depressions do, and the advisory packages, the product suite, everything will look exactly the same, except for calling it potential tropical cyclone instead of tropical depression. And this is a really big improvement in service because this removes the restriction and enables us to issue the right watches and warnings in a timely manner. And again, we're not going to overdo this. We're not going to do it so much that it waters down the utility and meaning of tropical storm watches and warnings and hurricane watches and warnings, because those aren't changing at all. They'll still be called tropical storm or hurricane watch and warning. So that's a new change for this year. Dan Brown will be giving a presentation about this tomorrow to talk through some details and answer questions that you might have. So those are the main changes for this coming year. And again, the big picture here is that we have focused on the hazards. The product changes, the warning changes are to focus more and more on the individual hazards. And in the case of the storm surge warning going operational this year, that's to address the biggest piece of the pie here, the storm surge being historically the most deadly hurricane hazard of all over the last half century or so. You've seen, many of you, this pie chart before, and I wanted to direct you to actually read the journal articles that our award winner today, Ed Rappaport, has published. This graphic is in the publication from March of 2014. It's in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. There's the URL, journals.ametsoc.org. You can download the whole thing and read it. It's very informative, enlightening, insightful details on what is taking the lives. And again, as we've talked about many, many times, all those blue shades mean we're losing about 9 out of 10 people from the water-related hazards when you're talking about the direct causes of loss of life. Our next big challenge, now that we've spent a lot of time and effort on the storm surge hazard, haven't solved it completely by any stretch, but a lot of our attention has been on that. I think the next big challenge in terms of the products, the warnings, the communication, the outreach, the education is on the inland flood threat. And I'll defer a lot of those ideas and that discussion to our late afternoon panel session, but certainly we've got a lot to learn from Matthew from last year. I've got some ideas, other folks at the Hurricane Center do, and I know a lot of you do too. So we can talk about more about that later this afternoon. But I also want to draw your attention to publication number 2 that Ed and his colleague, Ed Blanchard, put together, that was published within the last year, less than a year ago. And this is on the indirect causes of loss of life. And Ed could give you far more detail on this than I can in this short amount of time, but I wanted to point you to where you could read this full publication, again, in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. There's the URL, you can Google it. But what this is getting at is this is not the forces of the storm, the direct causes like blunt force trauma from the wind or drowning from the water. These are the deaths associated with the cyclone that probably wouldn't have happened if the cyclone hadn't been there. And there are so many details in here that I point you to read the article about, but some of the major categories here are cardiovascular incidents, evacuation itself, which points out why you all don't call for evacuations lightly. I mean, it's not a no-risk proposition. Vehicle accidents. People often don't think of power outages creating deadly situations out in the public, but this brings forth that notion. And what's really striking to me about all this is that we've lost almost as many lives due to these indirect causes as we have due to the direct causes. And there's a lot we can learn from this and really ramp up our messaging to the public in real time and well in advance, because there are so many things that are taking people's lives that we're not doing enough education and outreach about to help prevent them. So media partners and so many of us can really use these pieces of information to drive it home. And just as a personal example, I mean, if you look at this pie chart, some of you might be able to see something that strikes a little too close to you. That bottom middle one, indirect fatalities due to falling, I came this close to losing my dad that way about a decade ago when he was on a ladder on the pool deck dealing with the hurricane shutters. Fell on the deck, hit his head, and he's lucky it wasn't more serious. I mean, this stuff is real. And we lost people this way, or nearly lost some people some of these ways last year. So this is really, really valuable information. I again want to thank Ed for not only the award-worthy work, but the very tangibly useful data that this provides all of us for our outreach and education and saving more lives. To that end, let's talk about some things we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. And make sure you've got somewhere to jot down some URLs. This first one is to advertise some NOAA hurricane webinars in May on a variety of topics that you see listed here. These are going to be something that so many people here in the room and elsewhere, our partners, can dial in to learn about some of the details of our products and some of the tools that we're using, what we're doing to make our forecast better. So we invite you to dial into some of these. Some of these people giving these webinars will be actual Hurricane Center Weather Service folks. And those of you who know Dan Brown is our main contact as our warning coordination meteorologist at the Hurricane Center. You can contact him for the gory details, but there's the URL to get you started. And here's one, if you are a teacher or know a teacher or you're a parent, this one really I would encourage you to spread the word about. Let's get some of the kids who might not be able to come to the awareness tour stops that I'll talk about in just a minute. But we've been doing these webinars for several years, and here is another very tangible, useful, and award-worthy activity, as we saw today, that our friends from URI have been helping us with. And we're going to do one of these webinars again live from the Raleigh stop this early May during the Hurricane Awareness Tour. And again, some of us, I'll be on the tour, Dan, others, some of the pilots, you'll be back there, you'll be able to see the planes, and all you have to do as a teacher is sign up your classroom to participate, 4th through 6th graders. And as a parent of a 6th grader, I can tell you they love this stuff. And last year there was even a news crew that went to one of the schools participating remotely and did a story about the kids watching the webinar in their classroom and talking about how excited they were, even though they couldn't be in person at the awareness tour stop. So go to that website, sign up as a teacher, and get the kids connected during the awareness tour. So let's talk about the awareness tour. It's the first full week of May, starting on Sunday, May the 7th up in Canada. Who are our friends from Canada? I know somebody's here. We're making a habit out of doing the first day of the East Coast tour up in Canada, and I'm counting on seeing some snow. And then the rest of the tour will be Monday through Friday, the week of May 8th, Long Island in New York, at Reagan National in DC, intentionally inland like we did San Antonio last year. We're going to do Raleigh, North Carolina this year on that Wednesday. Then we'll do Orlando, and then Miami. We'll be talking about 25 years since Hurricane Andrew. And again, we have changed up the messaging and the strategy of how we do the Hurricane Awareness Tour because it is now aligned the same week as National Hurricane Preparedness Week. And we used to do the hurricane webinars for the 4th through 6th graders at a different time. We're bringing that into the same week, trying to make this bigger and better every year. And the theming is different. It used to be that we do these different themes every day. And Monday we talk about wind, and Tuesday we talk about storm surge, and on you go, talking about the hazards. We're still going to talk about those hazards, but we're going to focus on the same themes that you'll hear more detail on in just a moment that the Hurricane Strong Initiative is focused on. Tangible, real-world, actionable things that people and families and businesses can take to get ready for the next hurricane. So when we're in New York, our theme of the day is going to be evacuation planning. All those new storm surge products and warnings are not as effective as they need to be unless people know their evacuation zone and have an evacuation plan. That's the focus on Monday. We'll talk about all these things every day, but each day has a theme. Tuesday, we're going to talk about getting a supply kit together. Wednesday in Raleigh, how appropriate will it be to talk about insurance given the inland impacts and flood insurance and so forth. In Orlando, we'll talk about how to strengthen your home, and then on Friday, the theme that day is helping your neighbor and helping out those who can't do all those things I just listed without a little bit of assistance. So encourage your direct involvement, even if you can't be there in person. Participate through social media, have events in your own community, participate in National Hurricane Preparedness Week, and as you're about to hear, in the Hurricane Strong initiative. Thanks so much for your participation in that, because again, I really think that's the secret to making everything that we do together really reach its full potential, so people out there are doing what they need to do. And before I leave the stage, I just want to take 10 seconds to thank each and every one of you for all the collaboration and all the partnership during my 10 years as the director of the National Hurricane Center. You've got a solid rock, qualified individual in Ed Rappaport, going to be the acting director this hurricane season. I know you will. Give him your full cooperation, and he will give you his full support, as will the talented staff at the Hurricane Center. And we're not going to miss a beat. And I'm going to do what I've been doing all my life, continue in my next job, flapping my jaw about hurricanes. So, thanks.